Well, the cold snap that hit the country over the few days did not only bring snow and rain to large areas off the Eastern Cape, but also set a new record in Port Elizabeth for one of the coldest nights. The 10.6 degrees Celsius maximum that was measured in the city was second coldest day. It was the second coldest day for August ever recorded. Now, in the farming communities, the snowfalls might have brought pleasure for those who wanted to build some snowmen and women, but it wasn't the best of news for the crops. So I want to get the very latest now on the ground. Lerato Fekisi is joining us now live. Lerato, a very good morning to you. So the snow was good and bad news for the area. I believe you spent some time looking at the impact of the snow on the fruit farming industry in the Langkloof area.
Yes, Bill, I thought that it's important that we do our broadcast outside just to soak in as much sun as possible because we have had the coldest week in PE for as long as I know. Like you said earlier on this week, we saw the second most coldest day since Blaine 1904, which tells you just how cold this day was. But also much welcomed rain did come to the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro because in the catchment areas of this metro, we saw the dam levels coming to 17%, which is quite good because our dam levels have been quite low. And then in certain areas, Blaine, where they've had drought, like Karioto, Jobertina, and also the Langkloof, we saw rain falling there, which was also much needed because they are facing a drought, Blaine, that dates back to 2016. But like you said, I got the pleasure of driving to the Langkloof. It's a beautiful citrus area about 2 hours outside of PE. Went to see farmers that are farming apples, pears, and kiwis. And it was so interesting, Blaine, because on the one side I met a farmer, Robin Baldi, who was not really happy about the rain, saying that although they need the rain, but the snow damaged 8 hectares of his nets. And he was saying that, you know what, the damage caused there is going to cost him just over R500,000 to repair that. Then on the other side, I met an interesting farmer called Paul Lombard, who was saying that because his farm is shielded with mountains, his nets are safe. And he was saying, if anything, we need the rain gods to send as much rain as possible. But take a look at this link that we did of a story called Citrus when we were in the Langkloof.
It was a winter wonderland experience like no other apple and pear farm. Farmer Robin Baldi said it is the heaviest falls he has ever experienced. He is doing all he can to save his crop. 8 hectares of nets have been destroyed. The damage comes with a price tag of 700,000 rand.
This is the first time that we've had nets collapse with us, so it is a learning experience on how to get them up. We've got a team there behind me. There are about 50 guys underneath the nets digging holes, trying to get the poles up. We've got all our machinery here trying to get it lifted. So it's going to take a couple of weeks to get it up and see what the damage is. Personally, I love farming, I love planting trees, so the work that has gone into these to get them to where they are now it's very sad. We've got a team of ladies that prune these trees 3-4 times a year, and yeah, it's heartbreaking for everybody to have a look at the damage that is here. It's very sad.
Down the road is an apple and kiwi fruit farm. Protected by the mountain range, farmer Paul Lombard's farm received less snow and his nets were spared. Farmers in this area continue to struggle with the elements. An ongoing drought has seen just 35 millimeters of rain falling in recent months. This, coupled with water restrictions and COVID-19, have made farming a tough job.
The COVID pandemic is actually adding more cost to your operation, starting from labor, starting from hygienic procedures, starting with the travel of workers. So it's actually more cost adding on to your operation. And then also from a marketing point of view, the uncertainty of the market access, your exchange rate, your slow tempo of sales, which puts a big pressure on your marketing side. So yeah, the pandemic, although we went on to work full operation, but still on the market side, it's very difficult, especially with the harbors closing and also the African market that's saturated in slow movement in obviously low prices.
The Ontwikkelings Dam, which is the main water supply for farmers, is less than quarter full.
Die reën wat geval het is glad nie genoeg gewees nie.
The rain that recently fell is not enough. The effect it had on the farms, it is really minimal. The downside of that is when we don't get enough rain, there is no water for irrigation.
Farmers are pinning their hopes on the summer rainfall, which they hope will bring much needed relief. Lerato Fekisi, SABC News, the Langkloof in the Eastern Cape.
Well, as you can see, Blaine, we were in the Langkloof, and you can see there that it's two sides to the coin. On the other side, the farmers are excited and saying that this is the rain that we need because they are facing a drought that goes back to 2016. On the other side, unfortunately for Ron Baldi, it has destroyed hectares of his farm. Another issue that we are facing, Blaine, in the metro is the issue of water shortage. We are also facing a drought, and our dam levels are really not where they're supposed to be. We have seen continuous water restrictions, and I've just talked to Shane from the disaster management, and he's saying we're going to see more restrictions because although we had extreme rain this week, it's just not enough to fill our dams to the capacity we want them to fight this drought. But let's bring Shane into this conversation and find out from him exactly where we are sitting in terms of water restrictions. Shane, in terms of water restrictions, you were speaking to me earlier on saying we're going to implement more of these because although we saw rain falling this week, it hasn't done much to bring relief to our dams, especially in the catchment areas.
Okay, yes, the recent rainfall, I think, resulted in a 0.6% increase in our dam levels. However, talking about restrictions, we are currently in the process of redeclaring our local disaster in terms of the drought, which will allow us, as people have experienced with COVID, to implement various regulations and directives in terms of the Disaster Management Act. Some of those restrictions will include flow restrictors, reduced consumption in certain areas, and so forth, and obviously increased tariffs as well. Currently we are utilising close on 300 megalitres of water per day. We need to bring that down to 250 megalitres a day. Naturally we're also doing communication strategies, awareness programs, all in an effort to try and reduce it, including trying to address our water leaks as well.
In terms of water leaks, you said there's a good story to tell about that. I know that there's so much doom and gloom with COVID-19, but there's a good story. The water leaks, due to the COVID-19 virus, you've seen a decrease and also an increase in the water leaks in the province.
Okay, thank you. One of the good stories to tell there is just before COVID, and probably not a very defensible approach, but just before COVID, we had something like 18,000 registered water leaks in our metro. As a result of COVID, in bringing in additional interventions over the COVID period, we've reduced that down to just under 1,000 water leaks in the city from it. So we've actually repaired 17,000 water leaks in the past 5 months, which I believe is a good story. It's had an impact, a positive impact. It's probably less than 5% of our consumption processes, but it's still 5%. Which is significant.
Shane, then we are obviously still in a drought. You said earlier on the only thing to solve this drought is going to be floods.
Yes, and I think you also mentioned it. There's a positive side and there's a negative side. The unintended consequences is that it is going to result in a lot of hardship for a lot of people, but it is the only thing that is going to have a significant impact on our dam levels is a significant flood in this area. It's the only way you're going to bring just over 17% up to the 90s to 100% levels, considering our largest dam is basically verging on empty at this moment in time.
And then lastly, Shane, you spoke earlier on that you're going to declare a drought disaster again in the metro because things are so bad.
Yes, I've already written to province and to the National Disaster Management Centres informing them of our intention to declare. It is currently busy with a gazetting process, so we will be declaring it as a local disaster once again.
Well, that was Shane Brown from the head of disaster saying that they're going to declare the drought in the metro as a disaster because things have got so bad. And also saying, Blaine, that what's going to solve the drought that we're facing in the metro are floods, which will have a ripple effect and a bad effect also on those, especially those living in the informal settlement who don't have good housing to withstand such flooding conditions. But saying that on a good side, the water leaks have been solved and we're seeing much relief in terms of that. But saying what the only thing that's going to solve the drought that we're facing are extreme floods. Let's go back to you, Blaine.
Yeah, Lerato, while we're talking about the Nelson Mandela Bay, it's been in the news this past week, the lack of a mayor, the need to hold a council meeting, etc., etc. I'm just looking at your COVID-19 positive case numbers, sitting at over 85,000 with regards to the number of fatalities, over 2,700. Important number here, recoveries, 80,614. Give us a sense of what's happening in the Eastern Cape, talking to all these issues.
When I was speaking to Shane just now, he said that as someone who's working in the Department of the Disaster, that he has seen definitely a decrease in the number of infections, and obviously, like you're saying earlier on, Blenda, the recoveries have gone up. On the flip side, him and I were talking about it, and he was saying that because people are recovering, people are also just relaxing. Kind of like saying, okay, COVID-19 is over, let me not wear a mask, let me go back to business as usual. So although we have seen with excitement from the government announcing that our recovery, like you said, is at 85%, the beds in the hospitals are becoming less full, but also on the other side now there is this general feel when I'm talking to people on the streets that, you know what, perhaps COVID-19 is over, and it is not over, but because now things are seemingly a bit better, because at one time we were the third highest province, and right now things are looking a bit better, not completely out of the danger zone. And I think the Minister of Health did allude to this, saying that although certain restrictions have now been lifted and we are now on level 2, but it doesn't mean that we must now relax. And I think that's the concern that Shane and I were talking about earlier on, that yes, the recoveries are going up, yes, the hospitals are not as busy as they used to be, but it definitely isn't a sign that people must now relax and people must now lower their morals and go back to how things were, because we could possibly see a second wave, and when that comes, people will then be faced with even disastrous situations. So that's a situation right now, Blaine, in that the recoveries are definitely going up 85%, like you said, a sigh of relief for our hospitals and our nurse who have been on the front line in fighting this pandemic, but also an urge that it's not the time to relax. If anything, it's the time for us to put up our guards, because a second wave could just happen.
Yeah, no doubt complacency will be the enemy of progress at this stage, and there's always that chance, as you mentioned, of the second wave. So the 3 W's kick in immediately, and we can't let our guard down in that regard, with regards to wearing a mask, watching your physical space, as well as just being aware of your environment, being your brothers and sisters keepers as well. Washing your hands is so important as well. So all these hygiene protocols. Political reaction in the province, Lerato, tell us more with regards to what's been happening in the metro.
This Metro Blend, I can just say there is absolutely no day without drama. On Thursday, it was just going to be a normal day to come into the office and go to my work. And then I got a call that the acting city manager has been arrested, to my shock, obviously. And then obviously we had to break that story and make people aware of it. But Blaine, like I said earlier on, the acting city manager, which I think was the big highlight and the big story politically this week, was the arrest of the acting city manager, Mvuleni Mapu, by the Hawks, together with a lady by the name of Babalwa Ntanga, who is from a company called Jaki and Qabi. Now, Blaine, the story here is that this specific construction company allegedly bribed the acting city manager, who was in 2014 the director of the Department of Housing, of 900,000 rand, so that she could secure a housing tender with 12.8 million rand. So they were arrested with two other officials who have not been named as yet. They did get a bail of 20,000 rand. Now, this specific arrest, Blaine, didn't come as a surprise, because if you remember, I think it was 2 months ago, I was chatting with you with my guest Ongama Mtimka, and we were speaking about exactly the same person when it was challenged that how can a man who has frauded allegation charges against him be appointed as an acting city manager, secondly not having the right qualifications for the job. So already 2 months ago there was trouble looming around his name. There were allegations that he has fraud and corruption, so much so that the DA actually went to court to challenge that he be removed as the acting city manager and they be a good manager set in. But Blaine, the issue here, and I'll always stress that this is an issue of leadership. The last time that the Metro had a mayor was last year, December, when Mongameli Bobani was ousted through a vote of no confidence. Since then and now, the coalition and the leadership in this metro has not been able to elect a mayor because of infighting within these coalitions. Not only that, we still also don't have a proper city manager. We are aware that Anele Qaba has been appointed now by the acting mayor as the acting city manager. But in terms of where the metro lies and the instability in this metro, I think let me bring in Ongama Mtimka, the political analyst, to speak about in terms of whether the political climate now of this metro. Ongama, a shocking week yet again in the metro, the arrest of Mr. Mapu, your views on that?
Well, I think on the basis of the charges that the NPA and the Hawks have put before the courts, it makes sense and it's welcome that Mr. Mapu be arrested and charged formally, so that he can clear his name if he feels that he is being unfairly charged, and the truth can come out. So it is a welcome step. We know that as a result, there were a lot of challenges and allegations of maladministration and impropriety in his department in general. If you read the book by Crispian Oliver, for example, that talks about the extent of the control of political elites over the department, but also the formation of alliances which appeared to be criminal in their nature. These are allegations carried in the book. Obviously, this arrest is about a specific instance of bribery. It's nothing close to that broad, grand scale allegations that the department faces, which not just him, but the department itself. So it's a step in the right direction that there can be a charge on which he is expected to plead.
Ongama, 2 months ago, you and I were having a chat about this specific person, Mr. Mapu, asking ourselves, how was he elected in the first place as acting city manager with no qualifications and also then alleged corruption charges? It did emerge that there are also factions within the ANC, because speaking to the spokesperson this week, he said that certain members of the ANC actually were willingly voted him in, knowing full well that he had challenges. So this then speaks back to instability first in the ANC, which now wants to bring administration in to govern, and also the inability of the coalition also to put competent people into these positions.
So this underscores why some of us were concerned when the ANC took over this municipality when it had a divided house. So in an article I wrote about 2 weeks ago, I explained how something like that and a lot more other things could happen. So you have a divided ANC in council and ANC in the regional offices, Florence Matomela. So what happens is that there's a power constellation in City Hall that leverages the seats of the ANC being the second biggest party in council without necessarily being directed by it or following the internal normal processes of governing and the relations between party and state. So you are going to have chaotic things, not just about the appointment of the municipal manager, but about a lot more other things. So if you look at how swiftly, for example, a city manager was put in, you doubt that there would have been wide consultation processes. It just underscores the extent to which the power of those that are governing in City Hall is highly leveraged and highly chaotic.
You were speaking also that, in your opinion, you feel that the administration must come in and take over, because you're saying although the coalition parties have got a right to complain that there's no mayor, but they've been given since last year December to elect a mayor and they failed to do so. So perhaps being placed under administration, although we know it has its negative side, is perhaps a solution for this metro.
So part of the problem is that the ANC in council, along with its allied forces under the banner of the Black Caucus, doesn't appear to limit itself to issues of legality. So, for example, a council meeting must be called in order to vote on the issue. But precisely because that coalition understands that its power is leveraged, okay, which is it's created out of nothing. It realizes once it goes into that coalition government, the worst that would happen is that the DA will do what the ANC did in Gauteng, constitute a minority government. So that's the risk they fear. You don't know why Mafaya doesn't constitute the council meeting and acts not as a speaker of council but a member of the power constellation that for the group that currently leads. So if that meeting were to happen, they would constitute a meeting. So we hope that the court process will ultimately lead to that, failing which I think that they've been given enough time, as you are quoting. They've been given enough time to constitute a government here. Administration can happen. Bisho has got doubtful conduct and intentions, but I think the time for that is now over. You have this council dissolved. Bisho takes over for a maximum of 90 days and you go to an election, which election, by the way, will not resolve the issue of a majority party, but it may help to reconfigure the parties in the coalition.
Lastly, Ngama, I know that in your interactions you get to interact with people on the ground, because we're also speaking here of people whose service deliveries have also been compromised because of this instability. When you interact with people, whether it's people politically or people on the ground, what is the general feel from people about what's happening in the metro, especially in terms of service delivery?
There's extreme displeasure with the chaos that's happening in this municipality, both at municipal level, at the level of administration, up to the level of the average citizen. If you look at municipal reports, the annual report from last year, the municipality admits to a huge number of challenges. Even if there are some, as Shane said, some areas in which it is succeeding, but there are huge areas in which the municipality is underperforming in its annual report 2018-2019. And if you look at the mid-term report from last year, you see that there's a marginal decline in every aspect of service delivery, save for one. So what that suggests is that although the administration had remained resilient for a long time, it has arrived at a level where the political governance is actually crippling service delivery. So you hear agitations for something new, which is a break from the seemingly intractable political problems that are facing the municipality.
Well, that was political analyst Ongama Mkimga, just putting into perspective just the political instability in the metro. And like he was saying, the greatest concern is that with all this infighting that's happening, perhaps within the four walls of the council chambers, it trickles down to the ordinary citizens on the ground who don't get their services like they ought to, who don't get their services the way that they had hoped to when the government came into power. So Ongama was saying that this is not just an issue of political instability, but then when it affects the citizens of the country who have full rights to everything in this country, then becomes a problem. So that was our metro in a wrap. We had the coldest day since 1904, and then we had some on a political side, a hot political climate with the acting city manager being arrested, a new one being appointed in the name of Mr. Anele Kaba, and we are yet to see, Blaine, whether the council is going to sit. The DA is currently awaiting his judgment. It put in an urgent application for the Speaker, Buyela Mafaya, to urgently sit a council meeting to elect a mayor and also elect a good city manager. So we are yet to see this week. Perhaps that will then become the breaking news that there is a new mayor. But all I can tell you is that keep your eyes on the Eastern Cape, because not only cold weather, not only political climate, but there's so much more that's coming from this province and this friendly city of the Nelson Bay Metro. From us and my cameraman Kobani, thank you so much. It's a wrap, and back to you in studio.
Lerato, thank you very much.